it breaks out of the custom mold. We have not asked and answered the question of what we are within the context of world history. We see history unfolding around us, and many times we develop a complex, assuming that we are not the makers of history, because something has divided us between the period when we made history and the period when history was made at our expense. We were once not only the makers of history, but we were the makers of the world of our day, and this lasted for thousands of years. You must be reminded that over half of human history was over before anyone knew that a European was in the world. And you were in the world and had been there for thousands of years. And you were not sitting around idle, twiddling your thumbs. In the thousands of years when you did not know that the European was in the world, before your first trouble came from Western Asia, coming over 1,000 years before you knew of the existence of Europe. Now let me put a timeline on it so you can understand what I'm talking about. Africa had existed over 3,000 years intact before the first invaders, 1675 BC. The first European invaders, 332 BC. I'm saying that for over 1,000 years, when you began, you had thousands of years of history before you had any trouble from anyone. But the first trouble came from Western Asia. And that trouble was consistent and that trouble set Africa up for the European invasion under Alexander, sometime called the Great, 332 BC. Then he, like all Europeans, although he was more merciful than most, showed more understanding than most, began to misinterpret African people in their place in the history of the world. My point is that we cannot save ourselves and decide where we are going until we understand where we have been and where we are. With history unfolding before us, we have to become astute at asking and answering the question, where are we in relationship to what we are seeing right now? All right, now let's take some current events and let's play them over to see how we relate to these current events. Where are we in relationship to Panama? How do we relate to it at all? The head of the Joint Chiefs, the Supreme General who command the armies of America, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is superficially a person of African descent. I'm using my words advisedly. Superficially. He participated with great glee and great joy in the military encounter. He did not understand or call to public attention that he is a Jamaican and his people died in the thousands digging that canal. See, when you don't know history, look at the traps you fall into. You don't get into, you become so patriotic. Jamaicans, more Jamaicans than anyone else because they had more to send. Had more employment, more unemployed people. So they sent more labor. They labored on that canal for years. Jamaicans, Trinidadians, Barbadians, but mainly Jamaicans. When they demanded a raise 10 cents an hour, they were lynched. So now, what you act as though we have no vested interest in the canal. That's somebody else's show. It was not. When you understand what you relate, how you relate to today, you understand how you relate to yesterday. Now let's play a little further back. Let's go back to the discovery, opening up of the Americas. Let's go back to the 1400s. Let's go back to Balboa. Let's go back to the Spanish conquistadors. Let's go back to the discovery of that area when it was called the Isthmus of Darien. When African road builders built a road across what is going to become Panama. They could handle Indian labor, so-called Indian labor, indigenous American. They could handle it without the lash. How then could Africans recruit Indians without the lash, get them to work without mutilating them and humiliating them, and whites could not? The African humanity in the recruitment of labor was different. All of this is forgotten in history. Our role, the minute you heard about Panama, you should have asked yourself, what role did we play? How do we relate to all of this? Look at the contradiction of a Jamaican being chief of staff. I'm not arguing about whether he's entitled to be. He's probably more than entitled to be it. That's not the issue. But look at the contradiction. His people dug the ditch and died in the thousands. One of the main reasons his people dug the ditch and whites died of yellow fever in the thousands because something the Africans told me that proved to be true. The mosquito have a taste for white meat. So they told me in Ghana, I'm traveling in Togo, from Ghana to Togo, on to Nigeria, and the bus conveniently breaks down at the border checkpoint, so that makes the trip longer because bus driver get paid according to the length it takes to make the trip. I didn't know that until later. So they conveniently break down at the border checkpoint. You got to spend the night there. No hotel, no nothing, no rest house, no nothing. Go sleep on the beach. And so they said, Mr. Clarke, if you sleep near fresh water with your head away from going the same way as the wind. If the wind is blowing west, you lay your head to the west. The mosquito is not going to touch you. Because the wind will take your scent away, you know. It's not only Europeans lay the wrong way, they smell the wrong way and attract the mosquito. So no matter what you think of your smell, it's in your favor in relationship to the mosquito. Therefore, while some blacks did die of yellow fever, most of them survived to dig that ditch. Now can you see how you relate to everything? That didn't happen to you that you don't relate to in some way. And we can't save ourselves until we become astute at identifying our relationship to everything in the world, because we relate to everything in the world. Now let's deal with the so-called dictator. Niagara. What is it called? Somebody pronounce it. Niagara. He went to American military school. He's a light-skinned one of us. And so they didn't make it any better for him. They called him a nigger. And he didn't associate with the whites for a while. When they found out that if they could use him, they let him pass for whites. Then they let him engage in all the skullduggery until he engaged enough to have as much on them as they got on him. They don't want to try him. They want to kill him before he can talk. Now, can you understand that one of us who is a fraction will suffer the same as the blackest of the blacks once we fail to play a power game? My point is that to understand our history, past, present, and probably what it will be in the future, you need to know more than our history. You need to look holistically at the world. And this is what we have not been doing. Right now, we should be getting ready to debunk all of the celebration around the 500th year of the alleged discovery of America by Christopher Columbus, who discovered absolutely nothing. We should be getting ready now to prove, and we can prove it, he discovered absolutely nothing. And he never set foot on North America or South America. He stumbled upon some islands and he depopulated every one of them. Everywhere he went, he destroyed the people. We should have conferences, entire conferences, devoted to one item and one item alone. Revelations of Father Bartholomew de las Casas. Just to read his work and talk about it. 3 days. Have a retreat. Don't mix it with 1,000 other things. Just talk about Father de las Casas, the first historian of the New World. Because it was Father de las Casas Christopher Columbus went to when he saw the Indians, so-called Indians, dying wholesale. He would go to Father de las Casas to get an increase in the African slave trade to save the so-called soul of the Indians. And when the Pope sent commissioners to look into the disappearance of the Indians, many islands didn't even have one left. Dying wholesale of malaria, mutilation, brooding themselves to death. Now you have to look at the culture of a one-dimensional people. I'm not dealing with good or bad. I'm dealing with culture, and sometimes how people can get into a culture trap of their own design. We are in a culture trap right now of our own design, because we believe that the white man was telling the truth when he gave us Christianity. And we didn't go beyond what he was saying and look at the spirituality we produced and gave the world before Christianity. We dare not read about it. We dare not think about it. We dare not examine the conference at Nicaea. When the fakery that is now Christianity was fostered upon the world. And the reality and spirituality we gave the world got lost. Now, I'm not saying anybody should walk the world godless or spiritless. I'm not saying leave any church. Stay in them. Make them. But infuse spirituality in religion, you got a dynamic, you got a revolutionary dynamic. But without spirituality, you are wasting your time. This is why I'm against all these millionaire phonies imitating black Baptist preachers making a fortune like Swaggart and the other who have the spirit of a dog. They're taking something from us and disgracing it. Now, if you understand what is happening before you, you will understand what you've got to do. All right, now, let's look at what is happening in Europe. You think it is an argument between communism and capitalism. It is a difference of opinion on the methodology of European control of the world. Europeans have decided that they would control the world, be it communist, capitalist, socialist, or fascist. And there's certain Oriental races who decided they will help them. But you won't face this because you think once you deal with your white enemy, you have no other enemy. You are dead wrong. People want power by any means necessary, and they will take it from any person on this earth who have not learned how to use it properly, and you have not learned to use it properly, not even how to protect your own community. If we're going to save ourselves, there's something which I have called the essential selfishness of survival, which you're going to have to start practicing. There are blacks who, following some whites, who will say this is black racism. I say it is not. It is survival. But if someone want to classify it as black racism, so what? So be it. This is our community, Harlem. I think we should own every single house in this community, control every single house in this community, control every single store in this community, employ people in the community running these things properly, have our own social agencies, eliminate homelessness, put people to work, renovating the houses in this community. And if we did this and walked upright and began to fix our own shoes and have small factories in this community, have independent schools, good day nurseries, good child care, if we did all of that, a national theater with its headquarters in this community, if we did all of that, we are practicing nation structure. We would have at last understood what Booker T. Washington was saying, what Du Bois was saying, what Garvey was saying, and what Elijah Muhammad was saying. I don't separate one from the other. Now, I'm not endorsing Islam. I think religion without spirituality is a waste of time anyway. I'm not looking for a new one. I'm not trying to direct you to a new one. I wouldn't even call the name of Elijah Muhammad except the fact that he did make a contribution toward nation consciousness. In nation consciousness, you can make your own religion. You can go toward his, or make another one, or choose another one. The loss of nation consciousness is the loss of responsibility, and we are not going to save ourselves until we are conscious of nation responsibility and nation building. We're not going to save ourselves as individuals. We're going to do it as a collective. And to do it as a collective, we're going to have to be bold enough, even if we have to break our own hearts, to find out where we went wrong. Throughout history, we have been politically a naive people. We have trusted the wrong people. We have bought false goods, fake salesmen. We have bought things of a synthetic nature, not knowing that we had things of a realistic nature at home all the time. We have forgotten the fact, because we have not studied our history seriously, that before there was a Europe, we built enduring civilizations that lasted thousands of years without a jail system, without a word in our language that meant jail. We had family structures that were so tight. The family was structured in such a way that both crime and punishment was taken care of within the family structure, and you didn't even need a jail. And there was no word in that language that meant divorce, because each party had a support system. The uncles, the fathers, the mothers, all that together. And that foreigners declared war on this support system. Throughout our history, we have always been and still are, in spite of the contradiction, the world's richest people. Rich in culture, rich in minerals, rich in ideas, rich in imagination. We have not used this great riches to save ourselves. You can listen to white musicians. They can do a good imitation of our music, but they cannot do an exact imitation if their life depended on it. Benny Goodman played one imitation over and over and over. But he didn't innovate on nothing because he didn't know how. He learned a form. He played the form over and over. I have been listening to our musicians, and this is the genius of our survival. Because I used to work in a building over the old Metropole, when musicians are kind of down on their luck, they used to play at that bar there, where you play and half-naked women dance over the bar, get you to buy more drinks than you would normally. So when they're playing there, that means their luck is not so good. So Canada didn't pay so good anyway, but it's a gig, you know. You make a few, maybe make $20 a night, you know. Cannonball Italy was there one night. I said, "Hey, Cannon, what's the secret of you and the horn?" He said, "Man, Johnny Boy always played his horn the same way." And then he qualified. If my girl is sweet, I play one way. If she's evil, I play another way. Had a good steak, I play another way. Had a bad one, I play another way. But I always played the horn the same way, Johnny. I tried to understand what he was saying. Years later, we were growing up in the country, my wife and the children. I saw a dog on a leash. The dog could go to the end of that leash. He could jump as far as that leash would take him, one side of the tree, other side of the tree, but he could not go beyond the length of that leash. I said, "Stop the car." Everybody, the two children and my wife, thought I was crazy. I stood there just watching the dog. That's innovation. That's the heart of innovation. That's movement within a restricted form. That I remember Charlie Parker playing "Ain't She Sweet." Now I listened to him 3 straight nights, and he played it a different way each night. And yet he still was playing "Ain't She Sweet." He played it according to his mood. He wasn't in the same mood each night, so he didn't play it the same way each night. Some nights it sounded better than others. But he didn't kill the tune of the song. What I'm saying is that we have been put on stage without a script and told, "Act or we kill you." And we have acted. That's the nature of our survival. So we have learned something about survival that has eluded other people. We have not used what we have learned to continue to survive. We become now prisoners to forms other people created without using our imagination to survive. Otherwise, we would use our imagination. We could have rebuilt every boarded up house in Harlem. Mm-hmm. We're good carpenters. We're imaginative planners. And we are great decorators. Because we can use color and situation so well. Because why haven't we used our cultural gift to save ourselves? Now let's look beyond the United States. Let's look at the Caribbean Federation, a great heartbreak to me. Let's look at the Civil Rights Movement, another heartbreak. Let's look at the failure of the African independence explosion, the greatest of all the heartbreaks. Because that could have saved the two of us. And yet all 3 of them failed because instead of using our imagination, we were using forms developed by someone else, not knowing that your slave master and your colonial master created nothing that you can use to save yourself, because his form was to keep him in control of you. And when you use his form to control your own people, your situation is merely changing faces. You change your condition without changing your position. You have to understand the nature of the position in relationship to the condition. All right, now, one of the reasons why I want to start by examining the Caribbean concept of union and federation is that the idea of federation, the idea of Pan-Africanism was formalized by the Caribbean mind. How is it that the three great Pan-Africanists came from Trinidad? H. Sylvester Williams, Judge Padmore, C.L.R. James. They could never unify Trinidad. The great Federalists mostly came from Jamaica. The great internationalists came mostly from the Virgin Islands. Dryden, Hubert Harrison, Ashley Totten, who helped Randolph, but mainly Blyden, who tried to build a three-way bridge between African Americans, the Caribbeans, and Africa. Now you go to any part of the Caribbean islands, you find no nationalism of consequence. You even find the Rastas confused. You find a lot of rascals calling themselves rastas, and they are rascals. Now you explain to me, a Rasta who is a nationalist and been on Africa, what are they doing physically serving unfulfilled, socially inclined white women on all these islands? Why do they roam the beach in Jamaica to render sexual service to these women? Is that on your road to Africa? It's a side road, but Africa don't lead in that direction. So there's some confusion, even by those who claim African as purity. And anybody that claims Haile Selassie is the depiction of God on this earth is confused about the history of Haile Selassie. Now, I like the idea of the Rastas. I wish the Rastas wasn't rascals. I wish there was something in the Caribbean islands of pure black nationalism, because they've got something we don't have here. They've got a majority. Then they've got something else we don't have. They've got a special kind of revolutionary heritage based on being a majority. Their slave revolts were the most successful of the slave revolts outside of Africa. They have forgotten their revolutionary heritage and become too dependent. Their slave revolts were successful because they had an African culture continuity. When our culture continuity in this country was broken, almost destroyed, and yet we maintained a large degree of that culture continuity. Go to Jamaica. Everybody in Jamaica want to be everything except an African person. They're willing to tell you about their Dutch uncle, Scottish grandfather, everything. Nobody said, I am African and proud. In a conference on Marcus Garvey in Jamaica in 1987, I raised the question, where would Marcus Garvey be safe in the Caribbean islands? Where would he be safe in the world if indeed he was alive walking around? Why would he be safe? In Jamaica, some disrayed Jamaican would stone him to death. He failed twice in Jamaica. Jamaicans want to forget this. He's dead now. They can make him a hero, bury him in King's Park, and go back and say, Marcus Garvey's buried out there. They show you the word buried to make emphasize he's buried there. So he's dead. He ain't hurt nobody. If he was alive holding a mass meeting, they stoned him to death. Anybody would elect a Seagas prime minister, a Lebanese con man from Boston. There may be some hope, but I haven't found it. And yet, if the Caribbean islands would ever be the rallying cry for the return to Africa, if Jamaica fails to be that place, then there'll be no place. It has the resource, it has the personnel, it has the intellectual personnel, it has the technical personnel. Just like if Nigeria become a truly African nation and not a den of thieves, it can change all Africa. Half of the lawyers in Africa are Nigerian, half of the technicians, half of the engineers, half of the trained engineers are Nigerians, half of the school teachers and qualified professors in Africa are Nigerians. Nigeria could turn Africa around if it would, but it has to work as a collective and not as individuals. Okay, now let's look at what you call the civil rights movement in the United States and why this failed to be a vehicle we can use to save ourselves. And let's see if we can show you, when you do not understand the nature of the history behind an event, you're going to misinterpret the event and misuse the event and misuse yourself in relationship to the event. These young people, brilliant and beautiful and brave, got the illusion that they were making a revolution that had never appeared before among their own people. They were totally ignorant of the early 19th century black revolutions, of the black freedman in New England under Douglas, of the newspapers published by that group, the Anglo-American. Douglas is a North Star, Freedom Journal. They were ignorant of the relationship of brilliant Caribbean minds to that movement when nobody called themselves West Indian or Caribbean. Ignorant of the great contribution of the Barbadian Prince Hall, who found our Masons and didn't call it Masons, didn't call it Black Mason, didn't call it anything like that. He called it the African Lodge. Why were we closer to Africa then than we are now? Why do we have a romance with the word Africa then, have a way of avoiding it now? Why do we want to be something else now? We were comfortable being Africans then. When we lose our African connection, we lose our world connection. When we disconnect ourselves from Africa, we cease to be a world people. It is the African connection that makes us an important people of the world. Without the African connection, we are disjointed people just hung out, begging for entry into somebody else's house. As an African people, we've got a big house, 12 million square miles, full of riches And people are begging to enter our house to enjoy its riches. We are on the outside, not developing the talent to master that riches and exploit it to the benefit of all African people of the world, other than for European investors. If we stop talking about apartheid long enough, we'll realize the real issue in South Africa is not apartheid. European control over the mineral wealth of the world. And the headquarters of that control is South Africa. Most of the companies that control the wealth of Africa is South Africa. Now, if you read Sheikh Anta Diop's little book written over 10 years ago, Africa, the Politics of a Federal State, he outlined a plan telling you exactly how the mineral wealth of Africa was taken and telling you exactly what you're going to have to do to take it back and to preserve it for African generations still unborn. I was personally responsible for Sheikh Anta Diop's work being published in English in this country. His fifth book in English is coming out soon. I have not met 10 people who have seriously read his work. 10. His last book, written before his untimely death. When a man is great, any death is untimely, even if he dies at 102. Productive men, all death is untimely, because they should just stay here. But his work, Civilization or Barbarism, finished before his death, he takes off the gloves. He don't say maybe, no more. He don't hedge anymore. He don't say the information points, indicates, nope, you don't say this. This is it. And you know for the first time our place in the history of the world. Well, the book was promised for last year. Now, because of poor translation, had to delay it again. Now it's April or probably May. But when it comes out, I'm going to promote it as best I can with my own limitations. My main point is that we have not heard our greatest messengers, and we have interpreted as fights a lot of things in our life that were not fights. We've heard Booker T. Washington's message of self-reliance, and we've condemned him as being an Uncle Tom because he did not take public stands on many things. And yet Booker T. Washington could have scratched his head when it wasn't itching, and could have shuffled when there was nothing funny. But Booker T. Washington did achieve something you need to respect him for.
Right.
He did keep Tuskegee open. He did train a generation of people. He did develop an educational system that was good then and is good now. And had we followed that system and paid respect to it, you would never see a white plumber, bricklayer in this community, because we have our own. If you live in a brick house, you should own a brick yard.
Got that right.
Wear leather shoes, tan leather, make your own shoes.
Oh, yes.
Kids used to walk to Tuskegee through 3 states. Got no money. They worked their way through school, ride barefooted. He began a shoe repair shop and later a shoe design shop. And for years, most of the blacks trained in the design of orthopedic shoes were trained at Tuskegee. Shoes for cripples. trained at Tuskegee. It's all gone now. It's a liberal arts school, as though we didn't have enough of those.
Yeah.
We need more good technical training schools. Schools where a man will be trained to be a plumber, trained to lay a tile. A good plumber makes more than a good college professor.
That's right.
If you can lay tile in a bathroom properly, you make more than a college president. There's nothing wrong with using your hands and your brains all at the same time. You put those two things together with skill, you go home with some nice money and you can take care of the little lady quite nicely, you know. You can just tell her, honey, don't be buying those cheap cuts of meat. I want a nice first-class pork chop on my table. I want some prime steak sometime, you know. You can get to that. But we have forgotten this in the smugness and looking at Hollywood, looking at the soap opera, the most unreal thing in existence.
That's right.
Even unreal to the people who created it.
That's bad news.
You can take out your watch and look at a soap opera. Someone meets a man, and by your watch, in 3 minutes, she's in bed. I'm saying that a woman don't warm up that fast. Let's take the human factor into consideration. And besides, it's unreal. It's unreal to our society. Because we came out of a ceremonial society. We've forgotten to even discuss, and we can discuss it without vulgarity. Through history, the black woman has demanded ceremony before entry. Even if it's a lie, you tell it with grace. She knows it's a lie, but at least you respected her enough to invent it. You don't let these cruel people. No. This is why she invented the approach, saying, what's your story? And because you know she's going to bring off this stuff called what's your story, you get one ready. And though it is a lie, you tell it with grace and smoothness, and she will consider favoring you, at least. You told a good one. Your tie is properly tied, your shirt is clean, your smile is proper, you've taken a decent bath. So some consideration will be given, at least. But you're not a European, crude. You just say, come in. You snatching on what's around. You taking one of these European manners. I don't blame her if she refused all of it. You can't pay me the respect of telling me a story, even a lie. You just do it now. So leave me alone. Now let's get serious. Let's get back. Not that I wasn't serious all along. My point is that when we look at what's happening in Africa, although the independence explosion did happen between 1957 with the independence of Ghana for the next decade, the genesis of the explosion was 100 years before, when throughout the whole of the 19th century, Africans did not negotiate anything. They did not go to England to Whitehall, and they did not go to Europe with the chandeliers and the smiling ladies, you know, and the champagne. They didn't go to all of that stuff. They picked up their spears and picked up their shield and went to the field. And they outjumped some of the finest soldiers of Europe. And there's a good record of it. In South Africa, there's a record called The Negro is a Soldier. In the Sudan, there's a record left by Winston Churchill, one of the great war reporters since Caesar came home from Gaul. The young Winston Churchill. It's about the war in the Sudan, called the River War. The people that the Africans opposed and defeated wrote it down. We should read the record of the last of the Ashanti Wars, led by a woman, Ye Asantewaa, able and supported by men. The siege of Kumasi, the great drama of Kumasi. Any history of Ghana will tell you about that war and about this brilliant woman. We keep comparing ourselves with Europeans. We are not Europeans. In temperament, no European would have followed a woman into a war 9 months, giving no quarter, asking no quarter. And she had that war won until a great contradiction in history appeared. The famous West Indian Regiment that she thought was her friends. And she told her men to lay down your guns and go out and greet our brothers. They come to help us at last. The brothers in the pay of the British come to do her in. And they did. It's a longer story than that, but recently when I was in Jamaica, someone going to get some coconut milk for me. They leaned me against a rock and a tree and said that you stay here while I go get the coconut thing for you. And the West Indian Regiment was playing. And when she came back, nice Jamaican lady, doing me a beautiful favor. I mean, I didn't even know whether she knew Jamaica. She's a Jamaican, so she knew where to go to have a nice fresh coconut cut and so I can drink the juice. So she brought it back gracefully. She noticed that I was kind of literally wiping my eyes. She says, "What's wrong?" I said, "The West Indian Regiment. It's the band of the old West Indian Regiment." Who misunderstood the signals of history, fought against our people other than for them. But the year of Santewaa War should be celebrated by us. We should celebrate because we have not looked at women the same as the European. And when we look at them, even in courtship, when we take the same approach as the European, we are dead wrong. When we take the same attitude as the European, we are dead wrong. The European fears women. And when he enslaved the boy, he enslaved her too. Only difference, many times her auction block has air conditioning. But she's on the auction block too. And when we look at this African independence explosion, we must take into consideration not one African nation came to power using an African indigenous structure of government. Everyone used an imitation parliamentary procedure taken from Europe. And I'm saying it's like wearing a coat that wasn't designed for your body and will never fit your body. The tailor had never seen your body and therefore cannot cut a coat to suit your body. And this is something you have to do yourself. Because you didn't wear no tight-fitting coat. You need another kind of code, politically and figuratively speaking. Africa will never succeed using European parliamentary technique. It will never succeed using Christianity or democracy as designed by the European. Because the African meant different things by Christianity. He means different. The African never used the word democracy. He never used the word democracy, yet he had more democracy than the European ever had or ever dared to practice. Now this is why some lawyers need to study the African court system. When the late Paula Murray, who was a brilliant lawyer, went to Africa, I asked her, why don't you study the customary court system in Africa? She spent more time criticizing Nkrumah and the educational system. She never got around to it. But had she studied it, and I'm not a lawyer at all, and I've studied it, it's democratic to the point of being cumbersome. Because the accused can examine everybody in the court, including the judge. And the case is not closed until the accused calls his last witness. And generally the last witness is his wife, who will witness his good character and how well he takes care of his family. And if that don't get it, he's guilty as hell. But there's a system that takes a man's total humanity into consideration. Now we will throw away all of that for a European system. Where were you on the night of June the 13th? That's not the issue. That's not the, besides I can't remember. The issue where I was on the night of June 13th is not the issue. But in African code, the issue is whether you have violated the laws, the customary laws that govern this society. Having done so, whether you have endangered the whole society. And if you have endangered the whole society, then the entire society has a right to call for your punishment. And the judge in the case, once you are proven guilty, asks you, in your opinion, what do you think, what sentence do you think need to be passed upon you now that you're proven guilty? In nearly most cases, the guilty announces a sentence for himself more harsh than the court normally would put upon him. He participates both in his innocence and in his guilt. Now this is democracy to the point of being retarding justice. I'm saying trials would last too long if they had this kind of trial in America, but the spirit of what they are doing is worth preserving. You go to a case in Botswana among the Bamangweda people, or the code is called the Kahapla. You bring your stool, you bring your lunch, you bring diapers for the children. You sit on the tree, bring fresh water. You don't know when the trial, you might come back 3 days. Trial still goes on. I'm saying that we must rescue these old values, update them, prune away the excess time involved because we have to move faster now. But the spirit is good. We must talk to each other again as we never did before. I remember growing up, because there's no such thing as illegitimacy. You didn't turn a girl out just because she's had a child out of wedlock. But as ladies in the community did gather around her and talk to her and let her know about the danger of this kind of a thing and that this wasn't exactly the right thing to do, and men would gather around the man, want to know what you going, in as much you're not going to marry this girl, what are you going to do toward her support? Now, men are impregnating ladies and tell you, none of your business, of course, you should have kept her dress down. That's not the issue. You know what could have happened. And girls have to learn how to check people out before they favor them. And if they're not dependable, don't favor them. You're not going to die. You can go a long ways through life without it. I mean, you're not going to lay down and die. He ain't going to die either. So some things can wait until you make a proper selection of someone you can depend on or believe in. I'm talking about we need to concentrate on the quality of people we're bringing into the world. There's no point of bringing someone into the world who's going to be a burden to the world and burden to the society in the world. We want everybody to be a contributor. And to be a contributor, a child needs more than mothering. It needs fathering too. A child needs socialization. If a child is without a father, he shouldn't be without the male image in his life. Okay, good. Now, I'm going to start summing up. I didn't know I'd spoken so long. I've been reminded of my next assignment, that is in Long Island. My point is that if we are indeed going to save ourselves, we have to find out not only what we have done wrong, but the number of people among us we have failed to make accountable to us. Everything that calls itself a leader must be accountable to us. Yeah. And if they are too sensitive to be accountable to us, then they don't go forth and call themselves a leader. Then let us deny them. Somewhere along the line, all of us, in our fascination for foreign toys, political and otherwise, we reached the fork in the road. And we saw many roads leading in many directions. And we read the signboards wrong. And we went down roads that did not lead us home. Now we have to go back to the fork in the road and read those signboards again. We have to find a signboard that reads unity, African World Federation, Pan-Africanism, African solidarity. When we see that on the signboard, the unification of all African people throughout the world, the self-interest of African people first, black and black unity being more than black and white unity, but black and black unity has to come first. When we see that signboard, after we go back to the fork of the road, meaning we might have to go back before we can go forward, we have to recheck ourselves. We might have to go back and make a decision, a principal decision. We might have to build great industries. Might have to start with our underwear. And the only reason I say start with your underwear because no one's looking at it. So if you make underwear, you get the seams wrong, you got time to get it straight. Then we work to our shoes, then our suits. And we learn something that is the basic cause of the re-emergence of modern Japan. There are two things the Japanese would not let their conqueror take from them. Their self-confidence and their image of God as they conceived him to be. You lost your self-confidence. You worship an image of God. That belongs to your conqueror. You cannot worship an image over the weekend, go to that same image the rest of the week and ask for a job, and fight that image the way you need to fight them, and outmaneuver that image the way you need to, learn that image and take that image apart in order to learn how to bypass him and defeat him in order to be free, and worship that same image at the same time. You cannot turn viciously on yourself because you do not resemble that image, and you cannot look at that same image as the epitome of everything good and look at the image staring at you from the mirror as the image of everything bad. Psychologically, you cannot save yourself